Football players have been cheating for over 100 years. In the 1920s, they dug holes in the pitch to try to injure their opponents. In 1960, they hid blades in their boots. And today, lasers are being used to blind players. So, this is the entire history of cheating in football. Let's head to 1915, when the first ever match-fixing scandal came about between Manchester United and Liverpool. At this time, Man United were battling relegation and Liverpool were comfortable in mid-table, but when they headed into their match, something seemed off. The referee noticed a lack of commitment from the Liverpool players as they missed a penalty, and some players would even get angry when teammates would try to score. The game finished 2-0 to Man United, which saved them from relegation and instead saw Chelsea go down. It was later discovered that 7 of the players on the pitch were involved in a betting scandal in which they all placed bets on a 2-0 victory to United. The English FA then banned these 7 players from football for life for fixing the game. But match fixing is still common in today's game. Something that we don't see anymore is what happened in 1924 because officials were literally digging holes in the pitch to try to injure players. In a match in Buenos Aires to lift the league title, the Argentinian team Chacarita was so desperate to win that they snuck into the pitch late at night and dug holes in the ground, hoping their rivals would break their legs falling in these holes. Turns out they avoided the holes and won the match the next day, securing the league in the process, meaning this time the cheaters didn't get what they wanted. But digging holes in the pitch is nothing compared to sticking needles onto your boots. The year was 1960. And Carlos Bilardo was playing in midfield for Argentina. Carlos was the type of player who would do whatever it took to win, even going as far as to stick needles in his boots to be able to prick his opponents mid-game. But this wasn't the only cheating Carlos would take part in because as a manager, he would encourage his players to rub deep heat in their opponents' eyes and even went as far as to offer Brazil doped water in the 90s. But surprisingly enough, his dirty tactics actually seemed to work as he lifted the World Cup with Argentina, writing his name in the history of football. Okay, now let's skip forward to 1983, where cheating was taken too far, because this time it left Diego Maradona with a broken leg after one of the most brutal tackles ever. This is Andoni Goicoechea, better known as the Butcher of Bilbao, who played as a central defender for Athletic Bilbao. He got this nickname for his extremely aggressive style of play, but in a match against Barcelona, he turned aggression into blatant cheating when he went in to injure the best player in the world at the time, with one of the most brutal tackles in football history. This tackle left Maradona with a broken ankle and saw the Butcher get a 16-game ban from football for the deliberate injury. Instead of feeling remorse for the damage he caused, the Butcher keeps the boot on display in his home for him to remember that moment forever. That's just brutal. But Graham Souness literally shrunk the football pitch to try to win a match. He was managing the Scottish football club Rangers and was heading into the second leg of a European Cup match against a talented Dynamo Kiev side. Rangers lost the first leg 1-0, but Souness came up with the plan. He knew that his team couldn't win by playing better football, but he thought that if they got physical, they would manage to snatch a victory. So the day of the match, Souness got the club to shrink the pitch by moving the white lines inwards, meaning the game would be tighter and would get more physical. The Kiev players trained the day before on a normal-sized pitch, so they were in for quite a shock when they arrived and ended up losing 2-0, meaning Rangers went through to the next round. Now, this wasn't clear-cut cheating because there was no rule that specifically said this couldn't be done, but after this game, it was made a rule that clubs had to announce their pitch size before the season begins. Now, whilst this may not have been clear cheating, what this goalkeeper did definitely was because it got his country banned from the World Cup and got himself banned for life. On September 3, 1989, Brazil faced off against Chile in a match that would decide which nation got to play in the World Cup. The stadium was full with 141,000 spectators, and within the first half, Chile found themselves in the lead 1-0. Roberto Rojas, the Chilean goalkeeper, was having a fine game when suddenly a flare was thrown on the pitch right next to the goalie. The medics rushed to see if he was okay, found him bleeding, and rushed him off the pitch. The Chilean team claimed that the Brazilian fans were the ones who threw this flare, but this wasn't picked up on camera. If the Brazilian fans were found to have thrown the flare, then Brazil would have been disqualified and Chile would have been sent to the World Cup. But it turned out that one photographer was able to capture the incident and once the photos were developed, we could see the flare was nowhere close to Rojas. It couldn't have hit him. The Chilean goalkeeper later admitted that he was so desperate to qualify for the World Cup that he hid a razor blade in his gloves and cut himself to cause the bleeding. This meant that Chile were disqualified from the World Cup and Rojas was given a lifetime ban from football. Okay, now we're entering the 90s and the cheating just gets even crazier from here, like the country who sent drones to spy on French training or the World Cup winner who got caught cheating and was banned from football for life. But before we get to those, in 1991, we had one of the craziest cheating moments ever because Diego Maradona got banned from football for 15 months. Now, Maradona has cheated before, but he's managed to get away with it famously with his goal against England to send them home from the World Cup using his hand. But in 1991, things got taken to a whole new level for the Argentinian when he was called in for a doping test and ended up testing positive, which saw him get a 15-month ban from football. Now, you'd think he would have learned from this ban, so when he returned this didn't happen again, right? Wrong, because in 1994 during the World Cup, the same thing happened again. Diego didn't manage to get away with it, but a player who did get away with cheating is Andres Müller, whose cheating won Borussia Dortmund the Bundesliga title. In 1995, Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich were in a title race to lift the Bundesliga, so when they faced off against each other, it was like a Bundesliga final. During the game, Dortmund midfielder Andreas Müller decided to take a dive in the box and won a penalty. He claims this wasn't a dive, but come on, there was literally no contact. This penalty won Dortmund the game and then also the Bundesliga title. Müller was later banned for 2 games, fined, and suspended from the national team for a while, but he didn't care because he was a Bundesliga champion, so the ban was definitely worth it. But Müller isn't the only football great to get away with diving, because in 2002, Rivaldo got football confused with Olympic springboard diving. It was the World Cup, and Brazil faced Turkey when a Turkish player kicked the ball at Rivaldo. Rivaldo took the opportunity to go for a dive and got the Turkish player sent off. Brazil went on to win the match 2-1 and then win the entire tournament. The entire stadium booed the decision, and Rivaldo even got fined £5,000 after the match, but he didn't care because he had a World Cup winner's medal around his neck. But as we enter the 2000s, the cheating wasn't just happening on the pitch, because Ryan Giggs was doing his cheating off the pitch with his brother's wife. This all started in 2003, and at the time, Ryan Giggs was one of the best players in the world playing for Man United. He had it all: money, success, a loving family, but that wasn't enough for Ryan. For a total of 8 years, Ryan had been having an affair with his brother's wife. This affair even went on while she was pregnant with his brother's son. After 8 years of lies and deception, the truth finally came out, and when Ryan's brother Rodri found out, he had this to say.
It was bizarre. It was a whole kind of emotions: numbness, shock, disbelief, a lot of things really.
He denied it initially, didn't he?
Yes.
And how did you manage to prove that you knew?
I'd said to him I had texts and pictures, and that's when he admitted it.
Damn. But what's crazy is he wasn't the only Man United legend to cheat in 2003, because David Beckham also made headlines when he did the exact same thing. Well, maybe not the exact same thing, there were no brothers involved, but in 2003, Beckham was married to his wife Victoria when a woman named Rebecca came out to the press telling a story of the affair she had with the superstar. Beckham was playing for Real Madrid at this time and was probably the most famous football player in the world, so this story really took the world by storm. Victoria describes this period as the hardest point in their marriage, but somehow they managed to work it out and are still together today. Okay, now enough cheating on wives. Because in 2006, there was the most insane cheating scandal football has ever seen, which saw Juventus stripped of 2 Serie A titles and relegated, whilst other Italian clubs faced serious points deductions. This scandal is known as Calciopoli. So, what happened? Juventus, AC Milan, Fiorentina, Lazio, and a couple smaller Italian clubs were all involved in what has been described as a match-fixing scandal, where referees were picked specifically to favor certain teams. This was done through anonymous phone calls using foreign phone numbers to make them difficult to trace, but in the end, this all blew up and Italian football was shocked. Each club faced a different punishment, which depended on the level of involvement they had in the scandal. Juventus got demoted to Serie B and were stripped of 2 league titles. Milan were deducted 30 points for the previous season and 8 points for the upcoming season. Lazio were deducted only 3 points but were not allowed to play in the UEFA Cup the following season, and Fiorentina were deducted 15 points and were removed from the Champions League. Now, Juventus definitely got it the worst out of the clubs because the demotion to Serie B meant that a lot of their top players left the club, like Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Patrick Vieira, and Fabio Cannavaro. But luckily for them, they still had enough quality players to get re-promoted the following season. But now moving to 2010, Luis Suarez's cheating got a whole country to hate him. It was the World Cup quarterfinal and Uruguay came up against Ghana, and both teams were desperate to make it to the next round. After 90 minutes, the game was level and went to extra time. Ghana were all over Uruguay, and as the ball fell to them in the penalty box, they looked like they scored and sent off. But he gave Uruguay a lifeline. The Ghana player went to take the penalty and missed it, meaning the game finished level and went on to a penalty shootout. Uruguay ended up winning the penalty shootout, meaning Suarez's goal line catch was the reason Uruguay went through and the reason Ghana got sent home from the World Cup. After this incident, Suarez became known as Diablo in Ghana, which means devil. But Suarez refused to apologize. He said, "I did the handball, but the Ghana player missed the penalty, not me." To be honest, I agree with him. He cheated, but he got the punishment for it. Now, it's one thing having a player catch the ball off the line, but it's a whole new level of cheating when the club's masseuse does it, because that's what happened in Brazil in 2013. Just look at this. After that double save, he knew he was in for a beating from the players, so he just made a run for it. This double save actually kept his team draw, which is enough to send them through to the next round of the Cup. But now the year is 2014, and with the rise of technology, cheating is getting more creative because before a World Cup match, France noticed drones flying above their training ground. Turns out that Honduras were sending spy drones to try to pick up tactics from their training, but the spying proved to be pointless as France easily put them to the sword in a 3-0 victory. A couple years later in 2017, Honduras then claimed to be the victims to this drone spy method, with the alleged culprits being the Australian national team, but I'm not too sure if I believe them. Okay, now roll on 2022, and lasers are the new form of cheating in football, and this time, Egypt fell victim in the cruelest way possible. You see, FIFA were only letting one more African country into the World Cup, and it came down to 2 nations, Senegal and Egypt. After 2 games were played, the 2 teams were completely tied up, meaning the World Cup dreams of an entire country would go down to a penalty shootout. When Mo Salah stepped up for the penalty, everyone thought he was going to score. He always scores for Liverpool, but the Senegal fans had a plan to make sure he misses. They got out lasers and blinded Salah when he was taking the penalty, making sure he doesn't hit the target. Sadio Mane then stepped up for Senegal, and without lasers to the eye, he scored, sending Senegal to the World Cup and the Egyptians home, feeling devastated with the clear cheating that went on. But now it's 2024, and this World Cup winner has been banned from football for 4 years because he was caught doping. Paul Pogba has had one of the greatest downfalls in football, and now will probably never play professional football again. This started back in August when Pogba was an unused substitute in a Serie A match for Juventus and was called in for a random doping test. 1 month later, Paul's test results came back positive, which meant he was caught cheating, taking illegal substances. After a counter-analysis on the original test, the results still came back as positive. Paul was then slapped with a 4-year ban from professional football, meaning he won't be allowed to set foot onto a football pitch until August 2027, when Pogba will be 35 years old and well past his best. Paul claims he did not deliberately take any performance-enhancing substances, but yet he still tested positive, meaning he had an unfair advantage and was cheating, even if it was unknowingly. It's a shame that Pogba's career had to end this way. I was hoping he'd get back to his best at Juventus, but I guess it was all downhill from when he signed for Man United. But anyway, if you enjoyed the history of cheating in football, I'm sure you'll like the video on screen now, so click it.